Hey team, Ben Lawless here. I'm going to talk to you about AI. Teachers have a mad workload, as I'm sure you know, and AI can help us massively to reduce it. So let's have a look at some examples of what I'm talking about. You can get the slide deck for this presentation right there, although it's not really that exciting. It's mostly pictures. Oh, there's a few links in there. Anyway. The big one, obviously, is ChatGPT, Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Don't be an egg and call it ChatGTP. Us AI nerds will just think you're silly. So it's basically read everything on the internet up until 2021. Actually, I think it's been updated until about 2023 since I created this slide. I made this slide deck like 2 months ago, and half of it is already out of date. That's how fast moving the AI world is. It can access the web live now. I don't even think you need a browser extension. But bear in mind, it has read the internet and therefore knows everything on the internet, but it also has all the same biases as on the internet. So you need to be expert enough to know if what it's generated is rubbish or not. Yeah. So I'm good at writing rubrics, so I can train it to write rubrics, and I know whether those rubrics are good or not. If you just ask it to write a rubric without feeding in some developmental guidelines, they will be rubbish because most rubrics online are rubbish. The free one currently is 3.5. I highly recommend getting GPT-4. It's about $30 Australian a month, which on typical teacher salary, that's like 45 minutes of your work, and it will save you way more than that per month. So many teachers out there just using 3.5 and they're like, oh yeah, just ChatGPT's not that good. 4 is massively better. Like I've fed the same stuff into 3.5 and 4 and there's a huge difference in the quality of its outputs. It's also really good as a search replacement. Google doesn't actually answer questions. It just goes, you ask it a question, it goes, oh look, there's a website over there with the answer, whereas ChatGPT just answers the question for you. Yeah, so if you need quick answers to questions, it has a so every time you start having a chat with it, it creates a discussion thread, and that thread you can train that thread to do certain tasks really well, kind of like a little mini computer program, and then you can go back to that thread and keep getting that same output. So I've got a thread where I have trained it to write developmental progressions and rubrics, and anytime I want one, I just go back to that thread. Large language models take actually too much stuff into consideration. They're massive, so when we train one thread, we're narrowing down what stuff it looks at just so that its outputs are much better. There's a lot of stuff you can read online about how to do good prompts. I personally don't bother because I'm just a hobo and I just do trial and error. I try something, if it doesn't do what I want, I change my prompt. I think in the official rules about prompting, you should start with tell it what identity it should have. So for example, you go, you are an education expert, and then you say the task you want it to do in really explicit details, and then you give it the output format. So you might go, you are an expert Year 7 English teacher. Produce a worksheet on persuasive techniques that will take students in Year 7 about 20 minutes to complete. Export as a Word document. GPT-4, you can export Word documents, Excel. It's also got DALL-E, one of the better image generators out there, which comes with it. Yay. If you want to get some examples of some good prompts, go there. It's also got a free app. Be careful, make sure you get that exact app. There's heaps of apps on the app store that sound like they're the official ChatGPT one, but they're not. Right, let's talk about some use cases. That's the term meaning how you can use it. You can use it to generate text, so anything you want, example essays, stories, narratives, summaries of facts. You can get it to write emails, good times. So work samples is another really good one. You can get it to summarize stuff, so I've been lazy with my PhD proposal and there was some articles I didn't really want to read the whole thing, so I just fed the PDF into GPT-4 and said, give me that in 10 dot points. You can also use it to summarize, say you can use it to summarize textbook chapters. Yeah. You can use it to rewrite stuff. So maybe you've got a textbook chapter and you want to rewrite it at 3 different levels of literacy, you know, high literacy, medium literacy, low literacy. You can do that. I'd previously rewritten an entire textbook in simple language for some of my learners, but now you can do that at the drop of a hat. Generating work samples. So it's a really good teaching technique to show students examples of work that's good. So train chat to generate work samples in your area that are really good. A really good use, if you've ever read any of my rubrics videos, the best in-class use of developmental rubrics we've ever seen is rubrics with examples. So you have a small little work sample of what a student might do at the various levels. Very helpful for learners. You can get it to write questions and answers, so you can get it to generate multiple choice questions. All the images you're seeing here are all from DALL-E, and you'll notice that when it does text weird. So I often, in my prompt, if I'm getting it to draw pictures for me, I have to explicitly say no text, because otherwise it'll put hallucinated words all through it. You can do it for planning. So you can get it to do unit plans, you can get it to do lesson plans, you can train it to write lesson plans in a certain way. Yeah, you can get it to make slideshows, or there's various apps we can get it to make PowerPoint slideshows. There's just no end of cool stuff you can do in terms of planning. You can get it to create documents, so I'm talking about I've even used it to help me create a textbook. You can get it to create small learning activities for students. I've done that stuff as well. It's awesome. Flashcards, posters with classroom rules, you know, all that kind of good stuff. You can use it to differentiate activities, so you can differentiate literacy ability, as I was saying, by feeding in some text and saying, write this in simple language. You can also, if you've got a rich task that you've developed, you can say, make this harder, make this easier, whatever. If you've got it on your phone, you can, on the fly, in the middle of a class, if a student's finished an activity, you can just say what the activity was into your phone and say, give me an extension activity, and it'll give you something usable. You can use it to email parents, yay, and it will be much more polite and lovely and tactful than I am. Yeah. You can also use it for various aspects of reports. Now, most people who write lengthy reports, I am sad on your behalf, but if you do, you know, most parents know that we use comment banks now anyway, so you might as well get it to write the entire report, or not. It's good for assessment. Again, you need to train it in the rules of good assessment though. The rubrics that it generates otherwise are not great. You can get it to write quizzes, you can get it to write tests, you can get it to write, with most stuff, like I can get it to write a draft exam and then I would improve the exam. It's unlikely to produce like a really high quality one to start with. You can get it to do close activities, so that's where there's a paragraph with missing words and then you can make it have a word list, or you can just get the students to try and figure out what the words are. All kinds of stuff. One fun thing I'm getting it to do this year is to teach writing. So I've been feeding in, I've got my students writing into OneNote, and then I paste that into ChatGPT into a thread that I've trained to give encouraging feedback. You've got to limit the amount of feedback because students can't take in too much feedback at once. It's not going to be helpful. So I say give them one piece of advice about their spelling, grammar, sentence structure, essay structure, and some more examples of more content they could add. Try and keep it nice and quick. And by the end of the year, we will have hopefully gone through like 6 or 7 iterations where I feed their writing into the tutor thread that I've developed. And from the three times I've done it already, they're getting a lot better at writing. It's really great for brainstorming. This is probably the number one thing that I use it for. If I just want to generate 30 ideas for a game, or you know, give me 20 adjectives or whatever, super quick, and then you can pick something from there. As I was saying, it's good for writing rubrics. You need to feed in the developmental rubric writing guidelines, which you can find either on my website or on the Reliable Rubrics website, or just go and enroll in a degree at Melbourne University. Yeah, you can get it to write code. I have been using it to write Visual Basic stuff that you can put into Excel, because you can automate various functions. You can get it to write your Excel formulas for you. It writes pretty much every writes pretty much every language, Python, JavaScript, all that kind of stuff. You can get it to do simple research. It's fairly limited. There are now various sites that actually can include citations and stuff as well, but that's a little bit in its infancy. As mentioned, you can get it to create images. The three main ones I talk about are Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and DALL-E. Midjourney is probably the best, but it's the most complicated. You've got to kind of learn a really basic programming language, and it's all done on Discord, and it's done at the same time as other people doing their images. It's $10 a month. It's amazing. If you love image making, you should definitely use that one. I found it too complicated for my use. And DALL-E, as I was mentioning, that's the one that's inside GPT-4. I find that's the easiest because it's got a lot of prompts, negative prompts included in it already. So if you say, draw me a picture of a person, the person will only have two hands, Whereas a lot of the more free-form ones, you get all kinds of madness. Get it to make online quizzes. So you can get ChatGPT to create a multiple choice quiz, put that into Excel, and then put that onto Kahoot. Even simpler, Microsoft Forms, you can now upload a PDF directly to it and we'll turn it into a multiple choice for you. So you can make an automatically scored online test yourself. There's heaps of online platforms for it. I don't think you need to use any of them. Most of the online platforms, most of the paid services that you get just piggyback on the top of GPT-4 or one of the other AI models. So if you know how to use the model directly, there's no point paying for a separate service, because you could be paying $40 a month for the one that makes PowerPoints, $40 a month for the one that makes quizzes, $40 a month for the one that makes pictures, or just get GPT-4 yourself and you can do all of that stuff once you figure it out. Just a few random things that I use it for. As mentioned, rubrics, questions. I use it for work samples all the time. Yeah, they're probably the main things I use it for. But I even use it for, like if I've got a list in Word and I want to sort it by date or, add one little phrase. It's really good even for just tiny, simple text manipulation stuff. I have a browser with GPT-4 open on it all day when I'm working. You can also have custom GPT, so this is where other people have trained threads for you to use. I highly recommend checking them out. These are basically expert GPT-4 users who have trained it to do certain very specific things. It's awesome. This one here is Gamma. I used to recommend this. I'm not the world's greatest fan of it now. Basically, it makes PowerPoints for you. It's worth trying. You can have a little play around for free. That last thing was Elicit. It's a large language model which can give you research links. I hope that made sense. There you go. There's the prompt formula I was telling you about. So feel free to follow that or just do the hobo method, which I do, which is just trial and error. Like many things, it's not what you know, it's who you trust, and the world of AI is so fast moving. I'm sure as soon as I've made this video, it'll all be out of date, so you need to start following some people who are keeping in the know. This guy here, Dan Fitzpatrick, he's got a free book out. There. Here's a whole heap of prompts right there. Check that out. This one here is quite good. And that one there is quite good as well. There's also, if you go to YouTube and Google the latest in AI and just watch a couple of videos. Last thing I want to make a point about though is not about AI specifically, it's about the amount of cognitive work that students do in the past compared to now, right? So when I was at high school, if I wanted to do a project on ants, I would have to go to this doodacky here. If you're under 30, you probably don't even know what that is. A card file that has a list of all the books. I would have to go there, sift through that, find the 2 books in the whole library that are about ants, get them out, go through the index, contents page, find the 3 paragraphs in the entirety of the library that were about ants, and then I'd have to take notes, and then I'd have to structure that into a project and then make my project. Just think how much thinking I've done there, right? Now, kids in the current or just before the current generation could just Google stuff and it would point them to websites that had all the information for them, and now ChatGPT can just do the entire thing for you, right? So we need to start thinking. It's a concern. There are probably a lot of skills that are still in the curriculum that won't necessarily be that useful in the future. Essay writing, summarizing, I'm looking at you. Who knows? But, I think that AI is kind of like the calculator moment for text, certainly for the kinds of stuff that we do. That has been me on AI. Keep it real.